Hi, and welcome back to the Dreaming and Doing podcast. I am super excited about today's guest. You are in for a treat. Her name is Keren Eldad, and she is a speaker and executive coach. But even more than that, I think that she is someone who is incredibly smart, witty, and also someone who is incredibly generous. And I'm so glad to have her. Welcome, Karen.
Thanks, Melissa. It's so good to be here with you, buddy.
So, today we're going to be talking about mindset, which I know is a topic that you really love. And it's the start of a new year where people are feeling really excited about their new goals, their aspirations. And I think it's a time when we are filled with excitement around the possibility of what life could be like if we achieve those goals.
hmm
And mindset is going to be really important in that process. So I'm wondering if you can talk with us a little bit about what mindset is, if that's new language for somebody, and the reason that you love it so much.
I would love to. I don't think there's anything other than mindset. I believe very strongly, of course, in all the disciplines, tools, including goals and habit forming, et cetera, et cetera. But without mindset, you really have nothing. A mindset for anyone who's out there and really wants an academic definition is a collection of our attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors at any given time. That's a mindset. Your mindset can be very heavily influential on your output. I personally believe it's 100% influential, but of course, some therapists will beg to differ. And if your collection of attitudes says to you, yes, we can, and I'm ready for this, and I believe in my worth, and I believe in the abundance of opportunities before me, you are very likely to garner positive results. If your attitude or mindset is in a negative state, which is okay, we all wobble sometimes, it's just going to be much less likely. So at the beginning of a new year, when we tend to ask of ourselves for greater heights, when we feel like we want to hit reset and truly refresh into a new year, if that is your state, your mindset is going to determine your outcome. And we know this, Melissa. I think something like 60 to 80% of the United States set goals or resolutions at the beginning of any year. As we all know, only 8% make it by the end of the year or have actually seen their goal to fruition. I myself have had years like that. So I can talk about the differences between making it to resolution finish line and not, which are tactical conversations. Or I can say that the real difference is going to always be how you see things and how you decide to therefore behave, what actions you take as a result of that. Personally, I'd rather always talk about mindset.
Yes. Well, let's do it because I know that you're going to give us a lot of great information. So, at the start of a new year, we start out excited, but as you said, there's a point where the rubber meets the road
Yeah.
and life gets really real, and we start to recognize all of the things that we might have to do in order to achieve that goal and to make it come to fruition. And so I'm wondering what thoughts you have on how we can maintain that excitement, continue that to access those feelings of creativity and expansion when life is getting real.
I'm going to give you two examples, a small example of a quotidian life and a large example of how this affects a business owner. And I know this is going to resonate with you. You and I met in a business owner mastermind, and we'll talk about my own epiphanies around this, which, by the way, are continuous. It's not like we graduate and that's it. We figured mindset out. We're good forever. We're always going to meet another upper limit, right? That we have to shatter through. So I'll talk to you on the micro level, on the macro level, and hopefully everybody who's listening is going to benefit immensely. For most people, a resolution is going to be a health related resolution, a finance related resolution, of course, a personal life related resolution. Those are the three dimensions. Finances usually has to do with career or job, right? But it also has to do with money. Let's use the most basic. 42% of the United States begin a diet in January. That's true. And if 42% begin the journey in January, how fast do they get off the bandwagon of all those positive resolutions about going to the gym and eating healthy? What would your guess be?
I don't know. You said 8% make it to the end of the year, but I know that it gets tough real early on.
I know most of them will quit within 2 weeks.
Wow.
The vast majority will quit within 2 weeks. So by February, we're all back with the delicious cocktails and the yummy snacks and the packaged goods. And of course, it's easy to say, well, food is so delicious, it can't be overcome. However, what really happened is the desire was not big enough, and therefore the mindset was not optimal. The desire was not fully big. And this is an interesting thing. This is where an upper limit comes into play. Most of us think our desire is enormous, it's unlimited, it's unending, but it's not. Our frame of reference is usually associated with what is, in other words, what our state is right now. So we can only think a couple of steps ahead. This is where we therefore set ourselves a goal. And once after 2 weeks, we haven't reached that goal and we realize that it's a paltry goal, we think it's not really worth it anyway. This is a very important and critical distinction. Now you're going to see how it applies to a person who's running a business. If you're running a 7-figure business, like us, we can tend to think, well, if you 2x the business, that's fantastic, right? If I even do 10% more, that's fantastic, right? Our margins are a little healthier. We're done. That's an exhausting climb, though. That's such a tactical, heavy lift for anybody who's running a business that you, after a while, just go, whatever, it's not worth it. I was fine before. Let's just stay where we are. And this is because our vantage point is exactly where we are. And we can't really see broader than that. But then I started to ask myself when I started to come against these walls a couple of years ago now, a year and a half ago, what's the matter with this vision? Am I doing the same thing that the dieter is doing? And I was. I was only thinking 2x at best. The desire for that was not particularly huge because it's not going to make a huge material difference to my life. I'm therefore imagining myself at a completely different state in a completely transformed existence. And therefore, the sizzle's going to fizzle real quick, right? And then I asked myself, well, what would happen if we 10x? What would happen if we really started to think real big? That completely asks you to become a different person, to think like a different person, to take actions that a completely different level would take. And that created a mindset that I have found to be far, far, far more resilient and much more exciting, frankly, because your brain really wants to go there. It wants to be that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I love that you're saying sometimes we need to dream bigger than whatever initial goal we had. That maybe doesn't feel like that would make a big difference. Sometimes we need to dream even bigger and to let ourselves go there, which I think is really interesting because, one of the things that so many people talk about is maybe not feeling like they can share their dreams with other people, that even if they have a dream that is a big dream for them, that other people maybe try to minimize that dream or think that they're being too big. What would you say to that?
Well, they're always saying that, right? Like everybody around you this is called tall poppy syndrome. It's chopping off the head of the poppy that gets a little too tall. They tell people, for example, it's unrealistic to lose more than 1 pound a week. It's unrealistic or unhealthy to lose more than 1 pound a week. It's unsustainable to grow your business at a faster pace than is optimal. I'm all for consistency and I believe in habits that last and go the distance. But there is a very big difference between that and a moment of transition in life or a moment of change. In a moment of change, you should ask bigger because anything that is marginal will not substantially change your life and therefore will not substantially challenge your identity. You will retain the identity. If you retain the identity and you retain the baseline mindset, you're not going anywhere. You're basically going to just stay here. And again, that's fine if you enjoy comfort zones, but you and I know that actually comfort zones are not so comfortable. And after a while, you're going to be screaming and asking, why the hell am I not moving? And this is why. It's because you're not asking big enough, and it's because you're not willing to challenge your identity. You're not, in fact, willing to slay that identity. And, part of slaying that identity, Melissa, as you so well pointed out, is meeting those loving naysayers with compassion, but defiance at the same time. In other words, I understand that's how you feel, and it's logical that you would feel that way. And I know that you're only trying to help me, but please get out of my way.
Yes. Well, and the thing that's coming to mind right now as you're talking about slaying that old identity
Yeah.
I was listening to some of your podcast episodes this morning before recording, and you were talking about midlife transitions. And so I'm wondering, as we're talking about kind of slaying a former identity in order to move into something that's even bigger,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that grief process that you talked about in your episode, if you see that showing up with people
Absolutely.
as they're moving from their current identity to the desired one, the big one.
Now, this isn't my theory, of course. This is Carl Jung's theory and Elliot Jacques' theory, and that is that every emotional transition of identity will require or mandate a process of grief, even a teeny tiny one, an accelerated one. But all of five of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's model of grief stages will be present, and those are, of course, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. Yes, all grief transitions, all shedding of identity require a transformation of through grief and through a little bit of a shock to the system. That's why none of us want to go. I'll give you two examples. This morning, I made a little video for my Instagram, a coach tip, and it was about the most surprising thing that my dad learned when he was quitting smoking. My dad was a very heavy smoker in the 80s. Why I have such delightful asthma to this day. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, Dad. I forgive you. Anyway, he tried to quit for a very, very long time, tried to quit for a very long time, and it didn't stick. It didn't stick. In 1989, following the death of his best friend from throat cancer, he finally decided he was going to quit. And he found in the process of quitting that not only was kicking the nicotine habit hard, but he had to quit his lifestyle. All his friends were smokers.
Mm-hmm.
They all smoked together. He now had to find literally different friends because his social environment was not going to be supportive of this. He had to quit most of his daily routines and habits. This is a form of death. This is the experience of a complete process of renewal. The transition is therefore not just a physical spewing of the toxins, it's an emotional graduation. You know, in my case, when I started to confront those demons and I was like, well, something's not working, what is it? I had to kill a former self too. You and I share a very sweet behavioral style. We're sweethearts. There's kind of a problem with that. You can still be really, really a nice, decent person, but when you identify as a real sweetheart, you never want to go big because it's going to be jarring to other people. The people pleasing is going to have to die. Your boundaries are going to have to strengthen up. You know, I used to joke that I had the spine of a gummy worm. Remember that line? Yes.
Yes. When I heard you say that, I was like, I need to meet her. She is one hilarious, but I was like, I need to meet her.
Some of us truly have been blessed with the spine of a gummy worm, and we've been rewarded for it all our lives. So we think if I break this pattern, they won't like me. Well, guess what? They won't. They're not going to be particularly enthused about your desire to 10x. The old clients will not be particularly enthused about the change of conditions. Some of them will go, but you have to go willingly. You have to go willingly, knowing that on the other side is a new, healthy, healed, next level you. And that's okay. That's okay. However, as I did say in the last episode of my coach season, your new life will cost you your old one. There is no other way.